Dear friends, welcome to one of our wonderful, smashing firesides with Dr. Kambeze Banan Etemad. I just told his mother that without her consent, we agreed that I would adopt him. And Dr. Etemad Giti Khanum said, we're sisters, so the permission is here. Thank you very much, Dr. Etemad. Thank you for always responding so kindly and generously to our invitations. I really appreciate it.
It's always a treat to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Tonight, as you might remember or you might know, the topic is what's the connection between spirituality and mental health? A very crucial and important topic. Of course, I'm sure you remember that this is a follow-up to Dr. Etemad's online presentation, which is posted on YouTube on January 25th, 2026. This is the part 2, and it's after a brief recap. This evening, he will be dedicating this time to questions and discussions. For the friends who have not seen that presentation, don't worry, he's always so thorough that you won't miss a thing, but go back after this and watch that. Dr. Kambeze Banan Etemad is a retired, I don't understand this word for Kambeze, but anyways, because he emailed this to me, I will repeat it. He is a retired homeschool dad, an educator, author, amateur musician, and psychiatrist. He founded Talisman Development Services, a training and consulting company that combines ideas from many fields in a fresh approach to maximizing human capacity in life and work. Welcome, Dr. Etemad. We really appreciate it that you came back for the second part of this. And if I could ask the friends who know who they are to start the prayers, please.
Okay. Allow I shall say in Bahasa Malaysia, is there any removal of difficulty? So let's pray. Adakah penghalang sukaran kesukaran selain Tuhan? Katakanlah, terpujilah Tuhan. Ya Tuhan, semua hamba-Nya dan semua tunduk pada perintah-Nya. Adakah berhalang kesukaran selain Tuhan? Katakanlah, terpujilah Tuhan. Ya Tuhan, semua hamba-Nya dan semua tunduk pada perintah-Nya.
This is a prayer from Bab. He moved difficult. Almin Mufanijan Ha Gulham Chuban Hala Wala Kulun Abadun Yahu Wa Kulun Bi Amihahi Wa Haimun.
I'm going to say the healing prayer for whomever needs to be healed spiritually, mentally, physically. So, thy name is my healing, oh my God, and the remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and my love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing, my succor, in this world and in the world to come. Thou verily art the Almighty, the all-knowing, the wiser. Thy name is my healing, oh my God, Baha'u'llah. Thy name is my healing, oh my God, Baha'u'llah. Teu nome é minha cura, ó meu Deus, e a lembrança de ti, meu remédio. Aproximar-me de ti é minha esperança, e meu amor por ti, meu companheiro. Tua misericórdia por mim é minha cura e meu socorro, tanto neste mundo quanto no vindouro. Tu, em verdade, és o todo-generoso, o onisciente, a suprema sabedoria. Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Aliullah, Ya Zaribuzaman, Ya Mustahat.
Mr. Ganga, would you like to be the third one to say prayer?
Yeah, sure. Glory be to thee, O Lord my God. I implore thee by thy name through which thou didst lift up the ensigns of thy guidance, and didst shed the radiance of thy loving kindness, and didst reveal the sovereignty of thy lordship, through which the Lamb of thy names hath appeared within the niche of thine attributes. And he who is the tabernacle of thy unity and the manifestation of detachment had shone forth, through which the ways of thy guidance were made known, and the paths of thy good pleasure were marked out, through which the foundations of error have been made to tremble, and the signs of wickedness have been abolished, through which the fountains of wisdom have burst forth, and the heavenly table had been sent down, through which thou didst preserve thy servants, and didst vouchsafe thy healing, through which thou didst show forth thy tender mercies unto thy servants, and revealest thy forgiveness amidst thy creatures. I implore thee to keep safe him who hath held fast and returned unto thee, and clung to thy mercy, and seized the hem of thy loving providence. Send down then upon him thy healing, and make him whole, and endure him with a constancy vouchsafed by thee, and a tranquility bestowed by thy highness. Thou art verily the healer, the preserver, the helper, the almighty, the powerful, the all-glorious, the all-knowing. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you very much. Dr. Etemad, please go ahead.
Hi there. Okay, first let me get the sharing going. Portion of screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this is part 2, mostly going to be discussion as a follow-up. Basically, after part 1, which was not intended to be part of a series, the discussion was pretty animated, and there was the general feeling of, can there be more time? So Firuz and I, sort of on the spot, like we decided, okay, let's have a part 2 so that there can be more discussion. So that's going to be the mostly the plan. And it's hard to figure out what to recap, not knowing just how many people were at the first session or have watched the video versus maybe those who have not. So I'm going to basically go a lot more quickly through only about 1/3 of the slides. So it's not the entire presentation. It's more of sort of like some bullet points. And in fact, a few of those slides are actually new, because since part 1 actually occurred, this subject has actually evolved for me personally into really looking at how spirituality, religious distortion, spiritual bypassing within the culture of the Baha'i community can actually be a source of the mental tests that Shohei Effendi has anticipated would exist among Baha'is, as well as the possibility of mental illness or symptoms among Baha'is. And it's not meant to be geared towards talking only for Baha'is. It's meant to use the Baha'i community as a living laboratory to examine how, when spirituality helps and when the screwing up of spirituality makes things worse for a faith community. So let's just sort of jump right in. I think the main thing of basically the first 1/3 of the previous presentation is that we have 3 parts to who we are as human beings. We have a body, a mind, and a soul. And they each have their powers and their purposes. The body is physical, it's animal, instincts and drives, sensory motor powers, the nervous system. The soul is a spiritual entity. It has mystical capacity for perception of beauty and the divine. It is the wellspring of love, of understanding, the source of creativity. It is the repository of all of our noble qualities, what we call the virtues. And it is our source of justice, the ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood. And the mind, our psychology, is that part of us that psychology has studied quite a bit and has aspects of it like consciousness, emotion, intellect, will, and personality. So the practical purpose of all of that is to realize that if this part right here is the mind, the purple, the mind receives thoughts, feelings, and impulses from all kinds of directions. It can get impulses from the body, it can get impulses from the soul, it can get impulses from itself back to itself, and it can get all kinds of signals from the various social and physical and maybe even metaphysical environments that we are part of. And the poor mind has to sort and separate all of those and decide which ones to act on and which ones not to act on. Going back as far back as the Republic of Plato, who looked at human nature in 3 layers also. He called them different things and he described them in a different way, but he described what he called justice, internal justice, where each part of us has a role. And interestingly, Baha'u'llah's writings endorses some of the things that Socrates taught about human nature. And of course, Socrates didn't write anything down. Plato wrote down everything that Socrates taught him. So in many ways, many scholars of philosophy will say that the writings of Plato and the philosophy of Socrates are really, in a sense, part of the same thing. So I sort of borrowed that idea that some of the things Plato says is the kind of stuff that Baha'u'llah actually commended. And one of the things he said is that each part of us has a role. Our highest self, the soul, is the monarch. It's the ruler. It's the decision maker. The middle part of us, the mind, is the executive. It uses its psychological abilities to figure out how to carry out those spiritual impulses. And the body is the vehicle. Now, that's ideal, and the truth is that life is almost never ideal because body and mind also want to be the boss. And so they're all competing for who's going to be in the driver's seat. And that's where life gets messy, and that's where life gets screwed up. And the spiritual path is very similar to the path of Platonic justice. And here's a quote from Baha'u'llah that captures that. He says, "Obstruct not the luminous spring of thy soul with the thorns and brambles of vain and inordinate affections, and impede not the flow of the living waters that stream from the fountain of thine heart." And from a practical point of view, what that means is that our challenge as spiritual beings is to find a way to make the impulses of the soul stronger in our minds, and to make the impulses of our mind and body and of our surrounding environment quieter. That doesn't mean we neglect mind and body. That doesn't mean we don't pay attention to mind and body. It means that we don't let them be the primary decision maker for things, because we still need a healthy mind and a healthy body in order to follow what our spirits are telling us. And so spirituality is the practices of what we do to make the voice, the impulses of the soul stronger in the mind, while quieting down the other signals that come into our mind. It's about increasing the strength of spiritual thoughts, feelings, ideas, and intentions in the mixture that our mind is filled with, so that we can begin to pay attention more and start following more the noble, creative, mystical, loving, compassionate, fair-minded impulses of our souls. So it's not about let's go in a cave and quietly meditate, and that's all we do. Now, meditation is part of it. It helps us tune in and tune out to certain things. But it's about taking what we tune into and acting on it and living it. Mental health specifically looks at whether or not the different powers of the mind are functioning properly and if they're coordinated with each other. And mental illness is when one of these or one of the other faculties of the mind is either not working properly, or even if they're all working properly, that they're somehow disconnected from each other. And there are a variety of reasons why there may be symptoms where emotional or intellectual or cognitive or motivation or behavior is not working the way it needs to be. Of course, we talked about it in more detail then, but this is sort of like the Cliff's Notes of this, that mental health is looking specifically at the mind and its functioning. Now, when we look at mental illness and we want to understand when something is going wrong with mental health, anxiety, depression, impaired reality testing, they call it, fluctuations in consciousness, the inability to carry things out, difficulty controlling impulses. When we look at these symptoms, the key is to try to understand what are the underlying dynamics And when we think about that, if the mind is not working properly for some reason, because the mind gets input from everything, it means that all of these possible sources could be a possible factor in why someone is having mental or psychological symptoms. And it's not going to be the same thing from one individual to the next. One person, they may have mental symptoms because there's something going on specifically and only with their body and their brain. Whereas for someone else, it might be about they lacked certain skill development in mental self-management. Whereas for other people, there may have been trauma from their environments that impacted their reflexes, and they developed reflexes. And for other people, it may be because they either are neglecting their spiritual development or their spirituality was misapplied or distorted in their life experience. So it's different from one person to the other, but underlying processes can be multiple. And so there's a different diagnosis that can exist from one person with mental symptoms to another. And therefore the treatment and the remediation is going to be different from one situation to another. Okay. So what is the effect of mental health on spirituality? If spirituality is about hearing and being aware of our spiritual impulses and then using the powers of the mind to figure out how to live our spiritual impulses and then using our body to do it, well, if our mind is not working well, we're not going to be able to carry out our spirituality, no matter how spiritual we are in our heads. It's not enough just to be spiritually minded. We need some basic level of mental functioning in order to do that. And if there is some symptom impairing our mental functioning, then we may not be able to act on our spirituality as much as we would like to. And the same thing goes with medical health, physical health. So mental health is a facilitator of living the spiritual life. So what are the impacts of spirituality on mental health? So now we're looking at the other way. How does spirituality affect mental health? And there's positive impact and there's negative impact. So let's look at the positive impact. So when you are regularly allowing into your mind a greater portion of spiritual thoughts and feelings and intentions and ideas, there's pretty good correlation now that it impacts a number of things. First of all, if you have more creative, loving, in understanding, fair-minded, beauty-appreciating, joyful impulses coming into the mind from the soul, well, then the mind has sort of a different mixture in the soup. The soup has more spiritual vegetables, and therefore there's more possibility of acting on those spiritual impulses because they fill the mind more. There's often less despair. There's often more resilience. But being more spiritually minded is not going to fix a biologically affected depression or psychosis. You still need to deal with the biological piece. So it can be a positive contributor in many, many ways. And I'll show a couple of slides at the end that are new slides that speak to that. Now, what about the other way? What are the possible negative effects of religion and spirituality on mental health? And there were two things that we talked about last time: religious distortion and spiritual bypassing as two sources of negative effects. Religious distortion is basically when a religious principle or teaching is either exaggerated or distorted and imposed upon the faithful, a faithful person, either a child or an adult or whatever, that can distort the way someone thinks. It can create inner conflicts that create a lot of anxiety. It can actually form patterns of behavior that become part of our character that then become problematic down the line. It can be traumatic. So there's a lot of data going back to even before Freud, but Freud really cataloged how religious distortion in Viennese culture screwed up a lot of people left and right. And we've got a lot more data on that now. So that's one category. The other category is called spiritual bypassing. And this is not my term. It's out there in the world among thinkers of these subjects. Spiritual bypassing is when you use a spiritual idea or behavior as a reason to bypass or avoid something that needs to be done psychologically that's generally uncomfortable. Like if you need to do something for your health that requires you look at some aspect of yourself, and then you say, well, my religion says blah, 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 so I'm not going to look at that part of me. Well, that's bypassing right there. And bypassing can be in a lot of different forms. So I'll just read the whole definition. Spiritual bypassing is using spiritual or religious ideas, actions, or explanations to oversimplify, avoid, dismiss, or sidestep real, uncomfortable, difficult, unresolved, complicated, or problematic psychological issues. So one of the things, this is one of the new slides, and it's part of the sort of the evolution of this thing, is I've actually had a lot of experience working with spiritual and religious people, including many Baha'is, not only as a psychiatrist, but in the work of the company that I'm now part of, where a lot of times what I've observed is that there is religious distortion and spiritual bypassing that has been trained into the individual that I'm working with, that is actually a cause of their unhappiness, or it's a factor in their unhappiness. And so one of the things I'm looking at is how religious distortions and spiritual bypassing in the prevailing culture of Baha'i communities can inhibit spirituality, undermine mental wellness, fuel mental tests that were anticipated within the authority of the Baha'i community, regress community activities and plans, and sometimes even cause psychological symptoms for Baha'is. And, I could cite a lot of sort of things that I've read and written and worked on to, talk about the conceptual sort of theoretical credibility of this observation, as well as the fact that I've had so many different kinds of experiences working with actual mental health patients, to students, to people of all ages, in and out of the mental health care system. And what's important to know is that the spirit of this critique, I'll get rid of that. The spirit of this critique is not to be a complainer, but in the real belief that, out of love for a faith community, knowing that it is a developmental organism that goes through crises and milestones of growth, that honest feedback and honest appraisal is part of problem solving and self-correction. So I want to at least put that out there. So, and I've written a bunch of stuff to point out what some of these bypassings and distortions are. I've posted about them, and I even wrote a few letters to some of the senior institutions in the Baha'i world about them. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm not just here to stir up trouble. So let's look at a couple of examples of religious distortion. So a general example that I've seen with a lot of people, regardless of their faith background, is that they somehow believe that they should grow spiritually a lot faster than is realistic. And they put a lot of pressure on themselves, and it actually makes them anxious and depressed. So among Baha'is, I've noticed that there is a balance. There is a false dichotomy in a lot of thinking among in Baha'i culture about being negative or realistic versus being positive and idealistic. And that people who want to bring up issues and problems and struggles are often branded as negative or fault finders when they're actually the definition of problem solving and fault finding makes a separation between the two. Another thing that I've noticed is that there is a lot of misunderstanding among, for example, among Baha'is of what are the Baha'i teachings about not being involved in partisan politics and obeying the government versus a healthy, acceptable discourse about issues that are going on in the world. And as a result, oftentimes as a default, Baha'is will stay away from talking about anything that might be co-opted by politics, when in fact, Baha'is, can be leading the way in talking about these very issues in a new way that's not partisan, that's not polarized, that kind of thing. And another thing that I've noticed that many Baha'is, sort of oversimplify is that they will often say that all suffering and hardship come from God, and therefore they should just take it on the chin and endure. But the reality is that in my personal study of the Baha'i literature, there are multiple possible causes of suffering. And depending on what the cause is, there's a different response. If it's truly coming from God as a gift from God, well, then that might mean acceptance and acquiescence. But if it's because of something we did, we screwed up and we're living with the consequences, well, then don't sit on your butt. Get up and rectify the situation. It's not about let's blame it all on God and just sit back and take it on the chin. And I'm oversimplifying only because I don't have time. But of course, we could talk about it more. So what are some examples of spiritual bypassing that I've noticed, again, as examples of a faith community? I think this equally applies to people of any spiritual or religious background. It's just that I happen to be most familiar with this. So I think that one of the things that I think a lot of the culture of many communities that are still kind of developing and immature, they kind of bypass the steps and processes of community self-determination that the Covenant of Baha'u'llah actually requires Baha'is to do. The Covenant of Baha'u'llah actually has two levels to it. One level is who has the authority. And that's the one we're most familiar with as Baha'is. After Baha'u'llah was Abdu'l-Baha. After Abdu'l-Baha were the twin institutions of the House of Justice and the guardianship, and they each had their role. But the other layer of the covenant is that how do we take what we get from the authority and self-determine as local communities? And it's about what are the basic ingredients of self-determination. And it's about do we know the facts of our situation? Are we getting enough? Are we reading enough guidance? And are we truly consulting? And there are a variety of variables at play in the life of communities that can be undermining this self-determination. For example, sometimes some Baha'i communities are a little fanatical about we should only be doing these things and none of those other things, when there's nothing in the Baha'i guidance that says that. Or, for example, there might be that some voices in the community are just having undue influence in the community culture because not everybody is speaking their voice. And there's a general illiteracy among many Baha'i communities of what are the basic nuts and bolts of community administration, and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of accidental bypassing of the way Baha'is should be conducting their community affairs that often creates hardship for a certain segment of the Baha'i community who then experience symptoms. Another area that often gets bypassed is systems thinking. And the Universal House of Justice called this systematization. They wrote a letter about this decades ago, and they said that not only should communities learn how to do this and institutions, but even individuals in their personal lives. And part of systematization is always having a realistic approach, not having a fantasy approach of what I wish we were doing, but what are we actually capable of doing? And that a big part of the growth of the Baha'i cause is to actually practice the Baha'i system of administration, which the Baha'i writings call consolidation. Like for the past 20 years, there's been a lot of emphasis on a set of activities, the institute process, the core activities that are augmenting the community's ability to expand. But expansion and consolidation are supposed to go together. And like there's a lot of bypassing of practicing that system that creates distress for many individual Baha'is. And then another one is when there are what are called Baha'i-inspired initiatives. These are not part of the Baha'i community. They're companies or schools or professional services that are inspired by the Baha'i teachings, but not all of them do a very good job of that. And sometimes there can be a lack of clarity about what it is and what it isn't, and it can cause problems and it can cause distress. So that's another one. Another big one is the whole idea of problem solving. And there's a bypassing of looking at problems because some people like to believe everything will be okay. God will fix everything. And the truth is that that's not actually what is in the teachings. In fact, Abdu'l-Baha says that part of happiness is the ability to solve difficult problems. And that means looking at our own inner problems, looking at and critiquing the problems in the cultures of our communities, and looking at the behavior of individuals who are having a toxic influence on the life of communities. Like these are all fair game if we actually see what the Baha'i teachings are on problem solving. But a lot of times, like Baha'is feel like it's wrong to be looking at those kinds of things when in fact it's very healthy. And there's more, but like I'm just running out of steam to talk. So, so I'll just talk about these. Sometimes I've noticed that in the way we talk with each other among Baha'is, we don't let each other grieve when something sad has happened. We're always like, don't be sad that they've died. They're in a better place. And the reality is that, well, Baha'u'llah grieved when his son died. Are you going to tell Baha'u'llah not to be sad? Like, grieving is a normal, very healthy response to reorienting to something that has been lost. And if we tell everyone to just bypass grief and suddenly be happy, like, that's just fake. And like, that's an example. Another example is anger. There is often a misunderstanding that all forms of anger are bad and unspiritual. And the truth is that there are different types of anger, and some of them are righteous and super spiritual and ought to be honored. And the same thing goes with self. There are some people who say loudly and continuously that any reference to self is evil, is wrong. And the truth is that if you read the Baha'i writings, there are different references to self that are a veil to progress and that are the progress. So again, learning how to be a little bit more clear is helpful. Okay, so I follow this holistic health person, Deanna Minich, on Instagram, and I'll just read part of it. There is one important commonly overlooked factor in longevity, a person's faith and spirituality. a new study indicates that religious and spiritual practices may affect epigenetic aging. I'll explain what that means in a second. After accounting for lifestyle factors, only religious and spiritual coping remains significantly associated with a slower pace of epigenetic aging. And epigenetics, so we, for 100 years, we were hearing about the role of genetics. You know, what we get in our chromosomes determines what will happen. Well, epigenetics is the study, the scientific study of how lifestyle factors, diet, exercise, blah, 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 how they turn on and off different genes. So it's not just what genes that you have, it's whether they get turned on and off at different life stages based on what you're doing in your lifestyle. How much crap are you eating in your food? Are you eating clean food? What's your exercise thing? What's this? What they are finding is that spiritual and religious practice can turn on and off genes in a way that slows down the aging process. So, and I don't use AI much, but I just out of curiosity, I just did has there been research investigating the effects on mental health of existential/spiritual self-nurturance versus self-neglect? And if so, what have been the results? And then I asked it again and asked it to cite me sources. And basically it says, if you nurture your existential self, existential, spiritual, doesn't matter, less psychological distress, increased meaning and purpose, increased resilience, better physical and emotional health, lower suicide rates. Self-neglect existentially is increased mental health issues, higher risk of depression and anxiety, physical and social decline, functional impairment. And so there is data out there that, you know, when I was starting off in this field and I would put out some of these ideas, of course, all the scientists I work with basically would laugh at me, and people like me, to when asserting like these have definite impacts on like the way the brain works and therefore the body works and therefore the way health works. So the bottom line is that, you know, of this, you know, this stuff that I've been sharing is that distortions and bypassing can in fact be directly related to mental health struggles or wellness, and it affects the operating environments of communities that can then affect whether or not plans and communities are progressing or regressing. And then, okay, what can we do to address this? Well, myself, I deal with people on a case-specific basis, and it's impossible to give you a rundown of what those things are. But what I found as the most basic general things is people of a faith community need to learn more about what their authentic teachings are so that they can be the ones who say, that's not the way that my religion says it. And like not be subject to accidental distortions or bypassing and begin to insist more on it. So cross the board deep learning is a remedy. It's a preventative. And like I know a lot of people will say, well, that's what the study circles are for. But the truth is that that's actually not what the study circles are for. The study circles were developed by the House of Justice to serve a very particular role, to be a dragnet for people who are not Baha'is to get their first interface. It's not meant to be the deep dive learning. It's meant to be the mother's milk. So it means that there need to be other mechanisms of learning going on. The other thing is this idea of the implications of the Baha'i Covenant and those three ingredients of progress, of community self-determination, have to be part of the growing way that communities operate. Whenever discussing anything, a problem, an opportunity, we need to go through those three stages, and anyone has a right to insist that we need more facts about the reality of the situation. We need more quotes from the guidance. We need to consult more with true clashing of differing opinions before we actually come to the right understanding of something. And like in my own understanding and experience, if this level of learning and this level of ingredients could happen, it would be part of like helping establish more healthy and health inducing dynamics for faithful people who struggle with faith related dissonance. I'm not talking about people who have a biological depression who need to be on a medication. That's not here. That's its own thing. But I just sort of wanted to highlight this. And okay, that's the end of that. So I hope I actually didn't take too long because I really didn't want to. But I guess I ended up doing that, and that's my bad. I apologize. But now we're just open to having some discussion and question and answer.
Dr. Etemad, that was wonderful. Thank you so, so very much. If you could kindly look at the chat, or do you want me to read a few things in the chat? Which one? Would you like me to do that, or are you going to read it? If there's any response.
Okay, there are two there. I can read those and respond.
Okay.
Does the term mind equal intellect? The term mind is a general term referring to the psychological part of us, which includes intellect, emotion, will or motivation, personality, consciousness. So it would entail all of those things. And really, heart is also a colloquial term that really often implies the same thing. For example, sometimes Baha'u'llah will say, ponder in thine heart. So he's not saying think in your feelings. He's using the term heart to refer to the same psychological part of us that has feelings, thoughts, impulses, and that kind of thing. Does mental health mean absence of suffering? Absolutely not. The only way to be absent of suffering is to no longer be living on this plane of existence. And it is not recommended that you pursue that absence of suffering prematurely because you may screw yourself over in the process.
Yes. There is something directed to me.
Okay.
Tarani wrote, not all the Baha'is, but some of them. It was in the middle of your presentation, so I can't verify exactly
Yes.
what she is referring to.
I imagine it's a general statement about obviously not all Baha'is are in these patterns of bypassing and distortion. Of course not.
Correct.
However, when you read the writings of Abdu'l-Baha, and he says, if you have this and this and this and this, you will see these results of growth and progress. So when we're not seeing those results of growth and progress, the reverse engineering is that, well, then these ingredients are not enough yet. So it may not be everybody, but it may be a critical mass that is still impeding the progress of things in the everyday life and culture of communities. In my experience, I've worked with people all over the world where it doesn't matter whether you're talking North America, South America, Europe, the African continent, the Far East, wherever, people are struggling because the communities are bypassing a little bit too much. Doesn't mean everybody's doing it, but it means that the average level in community life needs to improve.
Yes.
I have a question, but I read Gary's remark because I love Gary, but then I want to ask you a question. Gary writes, suffering is the resistance of what is course in miracles.
Maybe Gary can elaborate. Is he here?
Gary, where are you? Shaloj, then we will
It was just something that I read in the book Course of Miracles about suffering.
Nice to
And
see
it's
you again,
something.
Gary.
Say it again.
Nice to see you again.
Great to see you, my brother. Great to see you as well. And so when I think of suffering in that vein, it's detachment. A lot of times we suffer because we're clinging on to something away. So I forget the time in my life, but when I ran across that article, it's suffering is the resistance of what is. And I reflect on that a lot. So in some situations, and I alleviated a lot of my suffering by detaching.
Yes.
And just, continue to strive through. So that's where that comes from.
100%. And that in many ways is the essence. It's the essence of the primary messaging of Buddhism, is that suffering comes from want. And if we learn how to transcend our wants, which is basically detachment, we can free ourselves from at least one layer of suffering. Yes.
Okay, Shahlajun, go ahead. We have a question by Molly in the chat, and then I have a question myself. Please feel free to raise your
thank
hands
you
if you
so
want.
much.
Go ahead.
Truly enjoyed both your presentations. And I think one of our problems is that we have a hard time to be moderate. Abdul Baha talks about moderation in all things. And we like the scream. We like, suffering in something or another. I think we often don't realize the holistic way of living is the best way. And as you look at some of the writings, if it's someone scientific, they're pushing that intellect. And then if they're religious, they push the religion. And if they are neither, they push the other. So I think we have to, when in reading all these, we have to kind of come to a happy medium where there's a balance in our lives. I often joke about my own family. They were fanatic Shia Muslim. They became fanatic Babis, and they became fanatic Baha'is. And we were raised by these people who just kind of got up, left their family, took off, and went to Timbuktu to teach the faith. Or they kind of sort of gave up everything in life and just basically lived certain ways. So I think somehow, for most part, we're getting to a more moderate lifestyle now to a certain extent, not completely. And I find myself enjoying the extreme. And I have no idea why, but I seem to enjoy kind of taking something to the extreme end, and then when it has exhausted me, going back to the middle. And I'm wondering if it is because that kind of thing gives us pressure or creates a situation where action becomes extreme, or is it because we are just by nature like the extreme of things? And I don't know if everybody else is similar in some ways. And I find that it is a release somehow when you have ended the extreme to kind of sit back and come back to the middle. So I'm wondering if that's kind of happens to majority of people, or do people are more straight on, or is this zigzag the natural ways of humanity?
Thank you, Shahlajun. Appreciate it.
Definitely, there are certain temperaments and personality styles that are that way, that like are all or none, hot or cold. They're not about in the middle. But there are also temperaments and personality types that are not that way. They are more prone to be sort of middle of the road or whatever. So I think it really varies from one temperament to another, but also even within one person from one life stage to another, or one circumstance to another. And there is a benefit and a potential drawback to be always being in the middle or always being on the extreme. And the interesting thing is that the Baha'i system of community life provides a way to temper all of that and take the best of all of that without letting it backfire. And it's those three processes. A lot of people who are extreme, they're extreme until they know the facts of a situation. And the facts are sobering enough for them to change their approach to something by simply knowing that so-and-so is suffering because of XYZ. Or, X number of community members can't do this because they can't even buy their groceries. Or, whatever the reality is of facts about the life of people or the situation or the community, that often has a way of tempering those who are at an extreme. And it has a way of triggering into intensity people who might always be a little too calm. The same thing goes with the second stage of community self-determination, which is when Baha'is actually take the time to read relevant guidance to whatever they're looking at, whatever they're addressing. Don't just pick one little phrase from the writings here and a phrase from there. Read the whole paragraph and read another one from another source and read 5 or 6 things from different sources that talk about it. And that has a way of balancing the extremities and the middle and blending them in a way that's helpful. And the third one is real, true consultation, where different opinions are allowed to clash. And some of them are going to be extreme. And so they deserve to be part of the clash. Not because they're right, but because maybe they're part of creating the clash that will help find what's right. Like maybe there is no right until there's a clash. And when you actually read the writings of Abdu'l-Baha, that seems to be what he often implies. That if we're not having clash of differing opinions, we're not going to get to the answer of many things. And so maybe a lot of times when we're making decisions and we're calling it consultation, it really hasn't been consultation. So, but if we do that, then extremes and, calm middle grounds, they have their place and they also get triggered to move outside of their usual place. If we get facts and reality, if we get guidance and principles, and we have real earnest deliberation, that is a way of drawing upon people, whether they are extreme or middle, and benefiting from all of it.
Thank you so much. Shalaj, would you give me 1 minute, please? Thank you. Dr. Etemad, I have a quick question, plus we have so many different questions in the chat, and then after that is Shahla Khanum again. My question is, now I need to reveal a few things about myself, that my grandfather became a Baha'i, and the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran was so fierce that they had to hide my mother in a closet, not for her to go out and talk about it. And she was a vivacious woman, and so in order to curb this kind of hostility, she had to deal with some of these things, and that's really the top of the iceberg. But she learned to bypass. She learned to simplify. She learned to live like that and survive like that. When we came to Canada, of course, we came before the revolution, but other people came after the revolution. I realized that I am doing exactly the same thing by simplifying and bypassing for my daughter.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so I'm what I'm saying is that sometime bypassing and simplifying is a mode of survival.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you won't be able to survive.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's not even about casting judgment on it. It's about recognizing, like you said, sometimes it's just the necessary way of being. And when a community or an individual outgrows it, all that matters is that we are aware of how we feel inside. Because if I feel like I'm ready to outgrow something that worked in the past but isn't working now, if I'm aware of my feelings will tell me if I'm willing to listen to everything I feel. So it's about creating an attitude in my life where I listen to how I feel. The community can do the same thing by listening to the diverse opinions in the community. Like if a bypassing or a simplification helped things get to now because of survival, but no longer works, well, that'll become clear if consultation is happening. But if consultation is suppressed and bypassed when the community is capable of it, well, then the community will never see if it's ready to move past things that might have worked in the past but don't work now.
So do I understand it correctly that if you have this in a family, in order to survive very difficult situations, it's acceptable, but within the community, you can't expand it? Do I understand this correctly?
It depends. If there's a member in the family who is suffering because of that coping strategy, then the family needs to figure out how to do things a little differently. Because the truth of the matter is that, in my experience, every family has at least one person that has a temperament that doesn't really fit in with the way things are done. And that is sort of like the pain in the ass / opportunity for growth for that family. So I think that it really depends on whether or not everyone in the family or that workplace or that community or that neighborhood, whether everyone truly is okay with it or not.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to the chat, and then we do have Brenda and also Shahla. Molly writes, my Christian friend who actually believes in devil and affects her mental health, and she dwells on it. Do you have anything to say about this?
There can be people who don't believe in the devil, but dwell on the things that the devil symbolizes. Like for Baha'is, the devil is a metaphor. It's a metaphor for a part of us. We don't have to believe in the devil, but we could be dwelling on that part of us such that it causes mental symptoms for us. So I think it has less to do with whether it's devil or anything that is disempowering, that creates a sense of futility or powerlessness or helplessness or lack of agency.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Peter Baldwin, first of all, Peter, welcome. I know it's 1 a.m. for you. We appreciate the fact that you're here with us tonight. Peter Baldwin is quoting Baha'u'llah and from the Kitab-i-Iqan, saying, furthermore, how numerous are those peoples of diverse beliefs, of conflicting creeds and opposing temperaments, who through the reviving fragrance of divine springtime, breathing from the Rizwan of God, have been arrayed with the new robe of divine unity and drunk from the cup of his singleness. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Wow. That
Wow,
is
wow,
just
I feel as
fantastic.
I'm struggling to learn how to enable my abrasive, self-opinionated, domineering personality to fit in with all the normies out there who believe in the mainstream reality, which I don't.
Yes.
So I find I'm trying to learn how to be more diplomatic, not to be domineering, not to be extreme. I really identified very closely with what Charlotte was saying, and trying not to be a pain in the ass so much,
Yeah. pain in the ass has a role in the growth of the Baha'i cause, though. And I because I have the same, that is my challenge too. And it's only been recently that I've come across enough pieces of wisdom that have enabled me to not punish myself so much and not put all the responsibility on me having speech that is even more refined than Abdul Baha before someone listens to what I have to say. Like, that's unfair. And like, one of them was, and I might have said this before, there was a talk given by Peter Kahn. Did I say this last week? A talk given by Peter Kahn.
I don't remember that.
Okay. I read the transcript. I didn't watch the talk. And during the Q&A session, after his talk, somebody asked the question, what do we do about all of the controversy that's going on in the Baha'i world? And, that there's, debate and bickering about this and that and the other thing. And I was just so enamored by what he said. He said, one of the functions of the Universal House of Justice, according to the writings of Abdul Baha, is to resolve controversy. And when a controversy starts off on the local level, it doesn't get resolved. It goes up to the national level. And if the controversy continues because some people are insisting still on certain concerns, then it goes to the House, and then the House resolves it. He said, friends, we can't do at the time he was on the House of Justice, the House of Justice can't do its job if you're not having controversies. And I just thought that was the most loving way to say it's totally okay. I mean, you really think that the Conference of Badash was let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya? Give me a break. It was controversy. It was swords controversy. Okay, granted, some of it was staged, but it was part of the culture. I don't like what you say, I'm going to cut your head off. And there's a way to accept that and navigate it. And one of the things that I skipped, which was the diversity of thought, temperament, and character, which is a term by Abdul Baha. And I think the ability to embrace diversity of thought, temperament, and character is a primal quality that if we learn how to do it, we will launch race unity into the sky. We will launch the advancement of women into the sky without having to necessarily do women activities and race activities, because we are all learning the fundamental human attribute of embracing the diversity of thought, temperament, and character. Because you can have a bunch of white folk in the same room on the same assembly, but they all think differently. And you can have a bunch of people on an assembly who are different, gender, nationality, race, blah, 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 but they all think the same. Which one is going to have a more vigorous consultation? It has, in some ways, it might not have anything to do with the usual versions of diversity we talk about. But if we really learn how to do that, we will grow. And I think one example of that is in consultation. It's not just, are we welcoming diversity of thought in consultation, but are we allowing different temperaments to express their opinions in consultation? I grew up in an environment where the only proper way to speak in Baha'i consultation was below a certain decibel level. Don't raise your hands. Don't be like you're in church. Don't be like you're passionate. Don't be like you're an activist. And as soon as you are, you get the there, Kambeze. There. And that's actually a violation of the embrace of diversity of temperament. What's wrong with being, hallelujah, I'm so excited, or, you know what, Shazam, I am pissed. I'm not pissed at you, I'm pissed at the situation. There's nothing wrong with that if it doesn't become vituperative, if it doesn't become mean. There needs to be wiggle room. So yes, I will forever, being the hot-blooded Persian with a caustic tongue, I will forever have to work on the refinement of my utterance. But I realize now that's only 50% of the responsibility, because I've learned how to accommodate all kinds of temperaments of expression. Maybe the culture of communities can grow in that way too.
Wow. Wow. Thanks very much. I don't think we're going to have a devotional at 8:30. Probably if the friends can stay with us, we will start our devotional at 9 o'clock, and this discussion can go further than 8:30. Dr. Etemad, would you accept this offer?
That works for me if it works for everybody.
Okay, perfect. Bob LeBlanc writes, you mentioned that we are enjoined to stay aloof of political conversations. We live in such polarized times, and I am wondering how Baha'is can contribute to healing this disunity without taking sides. Are we allowed to share our opinions? You seemed to be saying that we don't have to stay aloof. Can you comment further? Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Bob.
and this came up last time too, during the Q&A. I think actually Peter brought this up. There is another way to talk about difficult issues in the world without falling into the polarized, hateful platforms that are the habit of society. I think that, again, if Baha'is did those three ingredients, get as many facts as they can, objective facts about what's the situation really about. I think I mentioned last time that in my own study of the Israel-Gaza situation, I came across 70 plus independent variables that are at play in the Israel-Gaza situation. That's about knowing the facts and realizing that many of those facts are anti one group and many of them are anti the other group, meaning they're condemning of one group or the other. So why can't it be that every side should be condemned about a handful of issues and praised and supported about a handful of other issues, and everybody's a winner and everybody's a loser? Like that's what justice is, that you get punished for what you did wrong and you get rewarded or supported for being the victim of something that shouldn't have happened to you, or if you did something right. But if you lump all those 70 factors into pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, I mean, come on, the world is not, that hasn't worked. They've been trying that since the formation of the state of Israel, and it doesn't work. So we can lead, Baha'is can lead the way because, one, we should get facts. Secondly, we study as much of the guidance that's relevant. There's a lot of stuff that the Shoghi Effendi wrote about how to understand the metamorphosis of the world that's happening. And then we consult about what would it really be? What would the Baha'i approach to this really be? And then we come up with what we can say. I don't have a formula. Nobody has a formula, but we shouldn't shy away from attempting a non-partisan, non-polarized approach. And maybe it needs to be well moderated. But I don't think that avoidance of partisan politics and avoidance of anti-governmental language and behavior means wholesale not talking about certain problems in the world that might give comfort to people who need a perspective that we have that others don't.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Brenda John, go for it.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Etemad, I really enjoy your talks, and I enjoy how personable you are and with the variety or the expanse of your background and how you've brought it all together. I actually wanted to ask you something about the heart.
Okay.
Because what I heard you say was that the mind also expresses feelings of the heart. And I liked that. And then it made me think about all the times that, because I've done some research on the heart in the Baha'i writings.
Okay, great. Cool.
And there are pages and pages and pages of quotes that I have. I haven't read them in a few years, but about mostly Abdu'l-Baha, but as you mentioned, Baha'u'llah refers to the heart and how we communicate through the heart.
Yeah.
Abdu'l-Baha says that when souls are in harmony, their hearts can communicate. And I read a book many years ago by Dr. Bernie Siegel, who did organ transplants.
Yes.
And I don't remember a lot. I have a terrible memory, but I so remember this beautiful story of a woman whose husband was transplanted into a young man.
Yes.
And after a year, do you know this story?
No.
Okay, I'll be very brief. After a year, the family of the boy, the young man, and the woman wanted to meet. And they were going to meet in the chapel at the hospital. And they were late arriving. And finally, the woman, who was the wife of the man who died, decided she would leave. And all of a sudden, she had an experience in her heart that they were present. She felt her husband's presence.
Wow.
And they walked into the chapel, and they talked, and she recognized something about this young man that was her husband.
Yeah.
And they talked. Wow. And she had this guilt because they were arguing when the car accident happened and he died. And after arguments, they used to say, "Is everything copacetic now?"
Wow.
And what the parents said to her was that when he woke up after a heart transplant, they said, "How do you feel?" And he said, "Everything's copacetic."
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
So it makes me think that there's more information in the heart than maybe we realize at this point, that's one of the ways in which we're going to really evolve.
Yes.
And Abdu'l-Baha actually says the heart is an organ of knowing. I remember that.
Yes.
And I wondered if it might be, that the heart is maybe more connected with this holistic way of experiencing the world, whereas the left brain, the logical thinking brain, is looking for the facts and the reasons why things happen the way they happen.
Right.
But the heart can know without having to have that evidence.
Yes.
It just knows.
Yes.
And Dr. Bernie Siegel said that the heart's electromagnetic field is 25,000 times greater than the electromagnetic field of the brain.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
So I just think that the whole concept of the heart is one that requires more exploring. That
100%.
really, But I do appreciate what you said about Baha'u'llah saying, "Ponder in thine heart." But when I do that, I try to get into my feelings.
Yes.
But that's where I experience
Yes.
as opposed to,
yes.
"Oh, I really like that. That's smart. That's good thinking. I should live like that."
Yes.
Whereas this is, I just know that's true.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So beautifully said. I mean, I'm very moved by what you said,
Oh,
of course, of that story, and that Baha'u'llah speaks about that the mind is a mystery that that no mind, however acute, has been able to fathom, and our terminology. Like, I'm curious, like, what the linguistic relationship is between words in Arabic or Persian that get translated as mind or heart, whether or not there's a different relationship between those words, because they seem to be overlapping in what they imply. Definitely the fact that there's a physical, the fact that the guardian says, okay, that we have got a body, we got a soul, they associate with each other, and the mind is the link between the two while they're associating. It means that it's the body that provides instrumentality for the mind to function. So if we're looking in a generic, very broad-based meaning of the psychological part of us, And okay, we've always associated that with the brain, but in the past decade, the amount of research that is focused on the primitive brain of the gut being so primal in its as a root for our psychology, and so much about psychiatric stuff is now being tied to the gut. Why not with other organs that are totally unexplored in terms of that role, especially because those organs are plexuses of nerves that carry such incredible, elegant electromagnetic footprints. So we have no idea. And you know, what the explanation of a transfer of, you know, copacetic to copacetic, like just even exploring that is just a beautiful mystery to explore. Yeah, it's just a matter of being in wonderment and not giving into the tendency to be reductionist about everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you very much for saying all that.
Oh, that's a pleasure. I'm happy that it meant something. Also, the memory can be stored all over the body, right?
100%.
That's the other fascinating thing. Yeah,
Definitely.
body work and thinking. I just had an experience that really felt like I was being birthed. I had that experience.
Wow.
But then it's gone. It's gone in a moment, right?
Yes.
But it was like, wow, yeah, I guess that memory was being held in that spot that was clenching. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
definitely. I have a good friend who is a massage therapist, and the triggering of all kinds of memories is a very common phenomenon. Especially when you do deeper massage work, that now even your run-of-the-mill massage places, they actually are required to give you a warning that traumatic memories might get triggered. Like, it's now part of their practice to just even bring that up. So there's so many mysteries, from something as basic as you know, our most crude anatomy, which is not crude at all.
No. It's fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Dr. Etemad. I'm sorry, Bob. Did you get your answer? I cut you short. I apologize. Did you get your answer, Bob?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Doctor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, perfect. Gary?
I'd like to circle back.
Gary, which room are you in? You changed the picture behind you. Don't think we don't know it. Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to circle back to a couple of things when you were talking about diversity. And diversity is not cloning. That's one of the things, again, when we picture.
Is not what? Say that again?
Cloning.
Exactly.
Like we all got to be,
Right.
this and what's proper and this, that, and the third.
Right.
And it also made me think of the obligatory prayer. I just want to share these two parts in it where it says, the long obligatory prayer, he says, "O God, my God, thy forgiveness hath emboldened me, and thy mercy hath strengthened me, and thy call hath awakened me, and thy grace hath raised me up and led me unto thee. Who otherwise am I, that I should dare to stand at the gate of the city of thy nearness, or set my face towards the lights that are shining from the heaven of thy will? Thou seest, O my Lord, this wretched creature knocking at the door of thy grace." So I'll stop there and then go to the other part of it where it says, "Oh God, my back is bowed by the burden of my sins." So all of those things, like, it's almost like, for me, I would broad jump over certain prayers. There's certain prayers that were read, but they're applicable to every last one of us. Right. Nobody gets a pass in these prayers. These prayers aren't for some, it's for all. So what is this wretchedness in me? What is this burden with sin? We don't confess whatever it is, but that's one of those veils you have to work out between God. But just stop pretending that, like, I've heard people display certain things and say, "Oh, I'm a Baha'i. I don't this, I don't this." You're not excluded from that. You're part. We're striving to become these things. I say I signed a card. I'm striving to become a Baha'i, ever striving, because I don't have it all right. But grace and mercy, his forgiveness allows me to trip and fall and get back up. And that's the same grace we have to extend with one another when we are in spaces, diverse spaces, and people don't move or talk the way I move. How do I embrace this? How am I not offended? How do we cultivate what diversity is? And it's not one way. It's inclusive of all. So I appreciate your talking about diversity. But again, so thank you, as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
Peter?
In a conversation I had with someone who seemed to be very well informed and well educated and studied a lot of extramural sources, he said that this journey that white man has to take, the longest journey that white man has to take from the head to the heart, he said that it could be helped by putting your hand on your chest like this, as if you're saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and under your, over your breast, what do you call it? The breastbone. I can't remember what it's.
The sternum.
Sternum. Yeah, that's the one, sternum. And that connects the head to the heart through the arm, so someone said.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting because it helps to make that journey for white people, especially white people, I think, from the head to the heart.
That's very cool. I like that. Head to heart.
Friends, there's a lot of stuff in the chat. Please read it. Gary, you have messages there. And Peter has different things. Brenda, please look and see there are questions for you. Hi, Kay. Thank you for coming tonight. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was late. I was at another meeting, but it's recorded, so I'll go back and pick up the first part. I'm jumping on to what Bob LeBlanc wrote about involvement in politics. And I get the idea that we need to get the facts, read the guidance, do some studying, and consult. But between it happening, like one member of a community that I know of is posting some pretty ugly things on Facebook as a Baha'i about the political situation. And there may be some lack of appreciation of each other's diversity of temperament and all of that. But how to bridge that gap when it's happening? And I guess that's my question, if you understand.
Could you say a little bit more? I think I get what you're asking, but I want to make sure.
So one individual in a community is posting some ugly things on Facebook about a political opinion, using the name of some of our leaders and disparaging remarks. On the other hand, they'll post something beautiful, nice from the writings. And so there's this conflict of, are we going to be in this spiritual mindedness, or are we going to be pulling down the old world order?
Yes. So
then how does the assembly begin to approach that when,
yeah,
there are some maybe personality issues going on there?
So the steps that we covered a short while ago about getting a lot of facts, getting a lot of principles, actually brainstorming, consulting about what does all of this mean, that's all pre-opening our mouth. Like, in order to say, I want to know how I should see this, not what I'm going to say. Like, in order to know how do we see this, let's talk about it. Let's learn about it. That all precedes opening the mouth. And in my opinion, until you know enough facts, until you know enough guidance, until you've floated your thoughts with other people's thoughts, maybe you need to keep your mouth shut, certainly with the public. But let's say somebody has gone through that process where they've done all of those 3 stages and they feel like they have a pretty decent understanding. Then it's about having a conversation with somebody. Having a conversation, if I'm a Baha'i and I've benefited from a learning process with my community about how to look at such and such situation in my country, and then now I come across a colleague or a friend who is not a Baha'i, who is wanting a new way to look at things, my sitting down and sharing with that person the benefit of everything that I learned in a language that my friend can relate to. I'm not going to say, well, Sholi Effendi says this, and they don't give a crap about what our authoritative writings say, but say, have you considered that the world is going through this, and that this, and this is how the Baha'is look at it. But that's a one-to-one conversation. It's a little bit harder if you have a small group of people who want to have a discussion, but at least they're all sincere about not wanting to be in the partisan mindset. Even if you know what to say, to broadcast it on social media, where you are literally hitting the entire spectrum of the most enlightened to the most screwed up, walking in the paths of delusion people, and you don't know what you're going to trigger, that's just plain irresponsible. And in those cases where you're publicly platforming, that's where I think even like in some countries, the National Assembly has said, like, that's not the venue. Like, if there's anybody who's going to make a public statement, it's going to be the institutions on a national level or an international level. And the fact that they're not, maybe that says something. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be having discussions to understand among our fellow Baha'is and discussions with people who want to understand, with friends of ours who want to know our perspective once we know what our perspective is. So lumping them all together, I think that to say we should be having conversations about this doesn't mean we should be posting on Facebook and Instagram what might sound reasonable to 50% of the world, but then might launch 1,000 ships against us. And like that is an imprudence that is a separate issue. That I had a thought, but I lost it. But I think the main point is there, that those are 2 separate stages, separate arenas.
I can say that that I was at an institutional gathering a little while ago. I mentioned it to a counselor, an auxiliary board member, sorry, and he assured me that it's universal, it's a problem that's happening around the world, and that the counselors are looking into it, and they're not exactly sure yet what to do about it.
Right.
But it's in the hands of the institution. That was comforting to know.
The thing that we can do is we can educate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We can educate ourselves as individuals and as, groups of Baha'is. Like, this is not a think tank. This is a learning environment. Like, we're not here to come up with an opinion. We're here to know more about what are the facts and what are the principles at play. Like that we can do. Even while the counselors and the senior institutions of the Baha'i world are, like on the case, that's a separate thing for us to educate ourselves.
Dr. Etemad, may I make a comment here?
Of course.
I think as individual members of a community, whether we are a member of the institution or not, is to be kind to each other's. No matter what they do on their Facebook, no matter what they do in the fireside, no matter how they wash their feet or not, our job is to be kind to them. And of course, the institutions will take care of it. But that judgment creates a a break in the relationship of people. And I think we need to avoid it. I don't know.
Thank you. And I'll just say that that was the conclusion of the auxiliary board member to let it go. And that's not avoidance, because you're actually putting that energy into being kind, which is kind of difficult sometimes.
You better believe it. Yes, I agree. I agree. I agree. Do you, Dr. Etemad, please go ahead.
I think that most of the time that is the case. I think that what also can be considered is what is the domain of impact of someone's behavior? If someone's behavior is threatening the life of my child, there's no way I'm going to forgive them and let it slide. If someone's behavior is having a toxic influence on someone who can't protect themselves, then, but let's say it's not the jurisdiction of a local assembly or whatever. Like, it all depends on what is the domain and jurisdiction of the environment that's being impacted. And many times the behavior will impact multiple environments, multiple jurisdictions. So if it impacts the community health, then what a Baha'i does, if it only affects the community health, then what a Baha'i can do is say, I'm concerned about this behavior. I'm reporting it to you so I can let it go. Because to report it is to let it go. The essence of detachment is meant to turn his face towards the court of the Almighty and to bear witness unto him. Like, it's in the words of wisdom, the essence of detachment is to testify to God about your grief. So if we testify, then we can let it go. It's out of our hands. If it's in another domain that's not the assembly, that's not the police, that's not the local government, that's not the FBI, but it's a jurisdiction that's mine, that I oversee, that it's more than just I'm personally hurt. There are times where there might be the need for a just response. Like, you need to know, I'm calling you up to say that when you put those kinds of posts, my kid in school gets beat up. Or whatever happens. Like, whatever the impact, like, you need to know that your actions aren't without consequences. Like, what the point being is that if someone's behavior is only affecting something that's only under the jurisdiction of an assembly or an auxiliary board member, then you report it and then let it go. But if it's under some other domain, letting go is not always the Baha'i answer. It's not always the virtue of the moment. And I don't say I know what it is. I'm saying that we shouldn't automatically dismiss it as something to let go. Sometimes it's not to be let go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are many things in the chat. Peter, go ahead, please.
When Paddy Amara was our national secretary in the UK before the last national convention, when he left after 15 years to just become an ordinary member of the NSA, some couple of years before that, I heard there was a compilation about political involvement and activism. And one of the quotations was, even if we ignore the issue of right and left, and we go towards the dichotomy between good and bad, it still doesn't solve the problem, because even in the area of good and bad, of morality,
yes,
everything is so confused. We have no idea who's on which side.
Exactly.
For example, if you were at Badasht in 1848, who's right, Kudus or Tahirih?
Right.
They were completely opposed to each other, apparently.
Right.
So, for example, if I'm allowed to name names, if we have a situation where there's the president on the one hand and there's MTG and Thomas Massey on the other, are they really at loggerheads with each other? We don't know.
Right.
Some people might think, no, they're just playing a
Right.
stage-managed Kudus versus And so in that kind of situation, to try and figure out who are the good guys and who are the bad guys is impossible.
It's
Because
impossible.
we don't know how many of these characters are playing
Right.
double agent and pretending one thing and being another.
Exactly.
So confusing. To take sides is just a mug's game.
Yes.
I'm a mug, so I take sides because I think I know more than most people, but I'm just a fool. So I could very well be falling into the issues that have just been discussed, and I apologize for that. But hopefully I'll become wise with time, but I doubt it. But
I'm
Thank you,
looking up a
Peter. We're so glad you're here. Dr. Etemad, one of our friends had to leave, but he left this for you because people will watch the YouTube later. He said, thank you for a most wonderful and enlightening presentation. It gives me a new perspective on mind, heart, and body, and constructive collective discourse. Sorry, I have to leave. Have a divine night. Would you like to explain that? Because it's going to be recorded and then he can watch it later.
I'm sorry, I was looking something up, so I missed part of that.
Okay. Okay. He said, thank you for the most wonderful and enlightening presentation. It gave me a new perspective on mind, heart, and body, and constructive collective discourse. Sorry, I have to leave. Have a divine evening. Is there anything you would like to add for him?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Kyuk, hi. Nice seeing you.
Hello, yes. Thank
How
you very
lovely.
much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you for coming tonight. Please go ahead.
Hi there.
hi. Your talk really triggered me into understanding and thinking about individual Baha'is who are very active teaching the faith, but they shy from attending community functions, especially the feast. You know,
Yes.
I just don't quite understand because they are very vocal. You know, so many of them are very vocal, and I guess it's because they feel that they are not really they don't gel into the community way of thinking, and also they probably think that they don't get inspired by attending feast, because in our area the feast is basically just readings, whether or not we understand what is being read, or there's no discussion on that. So this kind of Baha'i culture, we don't know whether or not we should rock the boat, by raising up these issues. What is your advice on this?
Find those who will accept how you experience life. And that's my own life lesson, because that has been my journey. I'll be frank. That has been my own journey. I've had a weird temperament. I accept that. I'm an exquisitely sensitive person. And so I detect things that, like, sometimes it takes everyone else around me years to pick up on. Because I've been exquisitely sensitive my whole life, since I was very young, and the only solution I could find was to try to use my thinking to keep my sensitivity safe, so I can let myself be sensitive without being debilitated. The only long-term permanent solution I ever found was to ferociously read the Baha'i writings as the only source of constant source, an unfailing source of comfort and protection. And, when somebody is super sensitive, it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with combies. It has to do with someone who happens to be very sensitive, who overreads the writings. After a while, you just become tuned into things that you're the only one, so you're the weirdo. And I experience picking up on things that I think, oh, maybe, the writings actually imply we should consider this. Let's consider doing that. Let's adjust this. Let's adjust that. And then, of course, in real time, it's there's another one of Kambi's weird comments. And if I were to get a little bit more can we please look at this? Then, it was less kind than that. And it wouldn't be until 15, 20 years later that it's sort of okay, everybody is sort of seeing that now. And meanwhile, I'm 20 years past that, concerned about other things. So I've lived a path of that, not knowing how to navigate it. And I'm sure I made plenty of mistakes. And I ultimately came to the conclusion that it was just easier to think that I wasn't good enough to participate in the day-to-day rhythm of the community. It was just easier to operate that way. And so I was sort of it's too painful for me to be a part of things. And so I was sort of well, maybe that's Baha'u'llah's sign for me to direct my energy in other directions, which I did. I gave a lot of my heart and soul to homeschooling our daughter. I ended up writing 2 books of poetry that I would have never predicted, Baha'i poetry, developing programs, starting a company, doing things that are of benefit that I probably wouldn't have done if I were fully invested in only doing Baha'i stuff. So there's a benefit or there's a compensation. I don't know if it was a wisdom or it was God's purpose, but maybe God compensated or whatever. So I'm saying all of that not because, oh, boo-hoo, Kambi's story. I'm saying it because I feel utterly unqualified to give advice or respond to that question because I'm trying to figure that out myself. All I could come up with was to find a way to put together my thoughts and ideas and concerns that are based on the writings. And I put out a few essays on social media. I put out about 15 posts. And I wrote a letter to my National Assembly. I wrote a letter to my Continental Board of Counselors. And I wrote a letter to the Universal House of Justice because I didn't know what else to do. But interestingly, once I have done all that, I feel like I can move on. I've borne witness to what I've witnessed. And I can go on and serve humanity in the ways that I'm inspired. And one of them is whenever a bunch of Baha'is want to have a discussion or learning experience, well, I love to do that kind of stuff. And so I'll show up. So that's a long-winded way of saying, I don't really know if I have anything to say to that, except the story of my own, stumbling in that direction. What I do know is that I am definitely not alone. There are swaths of friends who are struggling with this because they are among those temperaments that the community hasn't yet learned to embrace that form of diversity. And it's that simple. The community culture needs to grow so that it can embrace a wider spectrum of temperaments, thought, and character. And hopefully it'll happen before a lot of the amazing human resources that are in our community decide they want to give their human resources to other things. So this is a lot more honest. I just had a joking conversation with a friend where, you enter a situation and you tell yourself you're never going to talk about this, this, or this. And here I am talking about that. But, the truth is that I wouldn't have if I didn't sense that people can relate to this. And I'm not saying it in any other way except this is the real life struggle of the formative age of the Baha'i world. Is that we put these things on the table. So not answering by not answering.
No, that was really great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Kyuk, I forgot, where are you joining us from?
I am from Singapore.
Singapore. Thank you so much. What time is it there now?
It's about 10.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Yes,
Uh,
thank you.
Are you okay? Kambeze, are you okay? There are questions. Would you like to?
I'm good. This to me is what it means to be a Baha'i. Huddled up in the basement of some place reading the latest tablet of the Bab that it just came. Like, to me, that's what it's all about. So like this, I can do it as long as other people want to.
Thank you. Thank you. Your authenticity is amazing. Gary John, go ahead.
Another, just a humble comment again, that to remember that we are going to have some of our greatest challenges from within. It's not outside, it's from within.
Right.
And my great difficulty had been striving, and this is just confined to Baha'is, striving to please people. And man, I always came up short because I would never fit in certain boxes. There was always something.
Yeah.
So I've shifted my quest to be pleasing unto God,
right,
and God alone.
Right.
And by doing that, less heartache, less trying to squeeze in a particular box, because no matter how I show up, I know God's grace and mercy is going to receive me. If I'm in my shiniest suit or my whatever dirtiest attire, there's a pathway to his grace and mercy that allows me to keep going. And I'm not disappointed or brokenhearted by striving to please God and God alone.
Right. Yes. Well, perfectly said.
As usual, Peter put in the chat Shoghi Effendi to Philip Hainsworth, who actually went to Africa and was with the Bananis. In 1946, the testing time in the UK community will come when the upper classes come into the faith.
Interesting.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Come back next week. Thank you. Go ahead.
I want to share a quote that I had been looking for earlier. It was in relation to the comment about we may be tricked into thinking there's a right and wrong when in fact both sides may be part of something that's for another purpose. Here's from The Guardian, from the book Directives from the Guardian. In such controversies, they should assign no blame, take no side, further no design, and identify themselves with no system prejudicial to the best interests of that worldwide fellowship, which it is their aim to guard and foster. Now, here's the sentence. Let them beware lest they allow themselves to become the tools of unscrupulous politicians, or to be entrapped by the treacherous devices of the plotters and the perfidious among their countrymen. So the Guardian is laying it out. We live in a world where your leaders are going to use you in games that you don't even see. So the best we can do is look at a problem and offer the principles that would guide it, and not get into policy debate or designs or that kind of thing. I mean, Baha'u'llah did promote the principles to the leaders, but he didn't recommend policy. It's a different type of conversation. Anyway, just wanted to say it while I found it.
Thank you so much. Mindy Olson writes, I recommend looking into heart Math Institute.
Ooh, I haven't heard that term in a long time.
Okay. Thank you, Mindy. Appreciate it.
That's
Go
wonderful.
ahead. Shahlajun, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm going to say something, and it's not answer to anyone. I do not let anyone or anything push me out of my community because I'm one of us. And if I take off on us, there is no us. So I feel very strongly, and because I am very political, I'm not part of a party politics, but I'm very political. I deeply believe in equality of women and men. I deeply believe that there's one human race, many cultures. I deeply believe in the environment. I deeply believe in many of the issues that's going on. I see on both sides of the wars in Europe and in the Middle East. I
Yes.
see the agony on both sides.
Yes.
And I speak about it.
Yes.
And I think we have to open our feasts to all thoughts, to all kinds of speech. Some of us speak with our hands.
Right.
Some of us speak with other ways, because 70% of communication is not the words, but the other parts
Yes.
that of us that participate.
Yes.
So when an issue raises, I agonize over it, and I do go through that period. I'm going to take off. I've had it. And then I realize that you can't be having had it with yourselves, because otherwise we will have no community. How are we going to fix some of these censors that we put on each other, and some of these judgment that we have against each other? How are we going to fix it if we don't go to that place? If we do not enter to this, this is a hard thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very tough because also institutions, local assemblies get involved, personalities become involved, people say unkind things. But how can we fix it if we take off?
And I used to believe exactly the same thing for most of my life as an adult. I think what is important to recognize is that approach is characteristic of a type of temperament, and not all temperaments can tolerate it the same way. So it might be that you happen to have a temperament that has more resilience under certain types of circumstances. That would be one conceptual response to that. The other thing is that Baha'u'llah used his own absenting himself from situations as a way of bringing about change. So absenting oneself is in fact a very powerful sociological action that can be done to bring about change. So I think that these are examples of how different people will see things differently. Whereas for one person, the endurance of a certain kind of situation makes them stronger. For a different temperament, the endurance of the same kind of situation debilitates them. And so it's really about being true to whatever one's sensibilities are, because oftentimes those sensibilities are in fact signals from the soul about how to make the best. There are plenty of situations. I mean, reading Taherzadeh's books, he talked about how Baha'u'llah, when he would stop participating in something, the vacuum of his absence was what allowed certain things to come to light. And that when things come to light, then there's a different energy, and that his presence is then what's needed. and of course, it's not to compare oneself to the manifestation of God, but if even the manifestation of God has to once in a while say, I got to take a break from this, whether it's for himself, which sometimes it was, because when you read in the Book of Certitude, when he was in Soleimaniye, he rained tears of anguish. Like, it's because he was miserable. But he also did it because, the Baha'i community needed to learn some lessons about what was what. So I think that, and it's interesting to be in a life stage where I was always the one who was sort of like, I'm just going to soldier on. And then it just became the wisdom. And I'm talking with other people. Oftentimes it was either always their temperament to be that way, or they had mutated, they had evolved, or they had just changed in a way where that made the most sense. So I totally hear what you're saying, and I think that for many people that is what they need and what the community needs. And I think that in other situations, depending on the temperament, it might be a different type of response or absence of response.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Etemad. Now, friends, it is 10 after 9. There's 41 of us here. Thank you very much.
Wow.
For being here. And Kambeze John, thank you very much for being so patient and dedicated and being with us. If there is any questions, please go ahead and ask. If not, we might, because it's very late, we might have a devotional for 10 or to 15 minutes for the friends in Iran and for the people of Iran. It all depends on you. Whoever has to leave, I understand. So is there any more questions? By the way, Peter, thank you for what you put in the chat. I copied it for myself. I won't read it out loud. Thank you. Yeah. So Gary, go ahead, and after that, start the prayers. Gary.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say before everyone signed off, happy, blessed, glorious Ayamaha to everyone. So
thank you. You can't sign off. You have to say prayer. You just can't sign off. Start your prayer now. We'll move into the reflective part of this tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
You were trying to pull a Ruhi Khanom. She had a reputation of just exiting, and nobody knew where she was.
Okay. Okay. Aloha, aloha, aloha. Aloha, aloha, aloha. Aloha, aloha, aloha. He who puts his trust in God, God will suffice him. He who fears God, God will send him relief. He who puts his trust in God, God will suffice him. He who fears God, God will send him relief. He who puts his trust in God, God will suffice him. He who fears God, God will send him relief. He who puts his trust in God, God will suffice him. He who fears God, God will send him relief. God will send him relief. God will send him relief. He who puts his trust in God, God will suffice him. He who fears God, God will send him relief. Ya Baha'ul Apa.
O God, my God, thou seest thy loved ones turning their hearts to thee and holding fast unto the cord of the ordinance and laws. I beseech thee by the waves of the sea of the utterance, and by him through whom thou dost adorn the heavens of thy might, to graciously protect them in aid of thy, by the aid of thy hosts. O God, thou beholdest thy lovers in Iran in the clutches of hate and enmity. I beg of thee by thy mercy, which has preceded the contingent world, to raise up from the earth those who will be moved to aid and protect them, and to preserve their rights and the restitution due to them by those who broke thy covenant and testament, and perpetuate such acts as made the inmates of the cities of thy justice and equity to lament. Thou art verily the powerful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Baha'u'llah.
My God, my fire and my light. The days which thou hast named the Ayami-Ha in thy book have begun, O thou who art the King of names. And the fast which thy most exalted pen hath enjoined unto all who are in the kingdom of thy creation to observe is approaching. I entreat thee, O my Lord, by these days, and by all such as have during that period clung to the cord of thy commandments, and laid hold on the handle of thy precepts, to grant that unto every soul may be assigned a place within the precincts of thy court, and a seat at the revelation of the splendours of the light of thy countenance. These, O my Lord, are thy servants, whom no corrupt inclination hath kept back from what thou didst send down in thy book. They have bowed themselves before thy cause, and received thy book with such resolve as is born of thee, and observed what thou hast prescribed unto them, and chosen to follow that which had been sent down by thee. Thou seest, O my Lord, how they have recognized and confessed whatsoever thou hast revealed in thy scriptures. Give them to drink, O my Lord, from the hands of thy graciousness, the waters of thine eternity. Write down then for them the recompense ordained for him that hath immersed himself in the ocean of thy presence, and attained unto the choice wine of thy meeting. I implore thee, O thou, the King of kings, and the pitier of the downtrodden, to ordain for them the good of this world and of the world to come. Write down for them, moreover, what none of thy creatures hath discovered, and number them with those who have circled round thee, and who move about thy throne in every world of thy worlds. Thou truly art the Almighty, the All-knowing, the All-informed.
Mr. Said Furughi, would you like to say a prayer and play as well? I apologize for not welcoming you earlier.
That's okay, no problem.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All
Thank
good.
you.
That's okay. Ya
Dear friends, it was an unbelievable evening. How can I thank you? Dr. Etemad, how can I thank you? I really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I'm grateful to everyone who participates here every week and support us and consult with us and share with us and create a very kind and safe space for us during these difficult days. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. If there's anything else, please go ahead. Otherwise, we say goodbye to Dr. Etemad for a very short period of time. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll stay behind to take care of the chat and save it. So I say goodbye to you all. Much, much love. Thank you.
Alpa, thank you.
Alpa, take care.
Mr.
Take
Liucci,
care.
I apologize,
Thank
Mr.
you very much.
Liucci.
Thank you.
I apologize. I should have asked you to say prayers. I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. Thank you. Allow fun. Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you again, Kambeze. Aloha.
Good to see you. Take care. God bless you.
Aloha.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for, because you